Hello and welcome to The Menu, Monocle Radio's food and drink program. I'm your host, Chiara Rimella. Coming up, we delve into the world of Korean food as the country continues to win admirers around the world for all its creative outputs. First, we sit down with chef Judy Joo to go beyond the big hitters on Korean menus to discover more about the nation's regional cuisine.
My mom is from just outside of Seoul, and, she doesn't like her kimchi too funky or too spicy, whereas if you go down south, it gets funkier, it gets spicier, it gets, fishier. I have to say I probably have diverged a bit from my parents' palate a little bit because I love all of those deep, complex, umami-filled flavors.
Also on the program, we speak to Matt Rodbard to flick through the book he co-authored, Koreaworld.
And he really introduced me about this world of Korean food that was less written about, but more enjoyed by everyday Koreans. And, around that time is when Dookie and I started writing our guidebook, and it kind of just started there.
Plus, we're in Helsinki to meet one of the many chefs taking this cuisine beyond the country's borders. All that here in The Menu on Monocle Radio. There's virtually no discipline in the book, be it music, fashion or film, that Korea hasn't enjoyed global success with in the last few years. Food is, of course, one of its strongest exports. From bibimbap to bulgogi, kimchi to Korean fried chicken, its staples have travelled far and wide. But as the Korean wave becomes more of a steady high tide, are restaurant punters around the world ready to discover the next level of the nation's cuisine? Chef Judy Joo has dedicated much of her career to championing the food of Korea in her recipes, TV shows and books. But being born in New Jersey, she also has a special perspective on the way this cuisine evolved and developed its own identity beyond the nation's borders. Already the founder of fine dining spot Jinju, nowadays she runs the more casual Soul Bird in London, where she specialises in making the crispiest possible fried chicken. Even when guiding people to cook Korean food at home, her belief is that this cuisine can be made simple, quick and effective without skimping on depth of flavour. I sat down with her in the studio to talk about how her heritage and the food she grew up with has shaped the chef she is today, and whether she thinks it's time for people to explore a new side to Korean cuisine.
Korean food is so wide and varied, and not only in terms of region, but also it's, we have 4 distinct seasons. So there are so many soups and stews because it gets bitterly cold. And so there's a long-standing tradition around that. And, we are harvesting from the mountains, the seas, it's a peninsula, everything from the ocean, from the, mountainous root vegetables that I've never seen before, from the valleys, etc. So every single time I go back to Korea, I am trying something that I've never seen before, like the wild and wacky, as well as, some just like super dynamic street food scenes at like all the wild and wacky stuff. And it's just incredibly fun. But Korean food, I feel like the greatest hits have all been discovered, things like Korean barbecue, you mentioned bulgogi, bibimbap, etc. And there's so much more to be discovered. And I feel like the soups and stews haven't been discovered yet. And there's so many great bubbling bowls and cauldrons of jigaes, we call them, that hug you back and really warm you from the inside. And there are so many regional delicacies. So yeah, we've only just scratched the surface, of Korean food. And, Korea, we eat everything, we eat meat, we eat pork, we eat, beef, etc. So, and tons of seafood. So there isn't really anything banned for religious reasons or anything. So the food really, takes on a wide, variety, and also like high-end versus low-end. We have Michelin-starred, 3 Michelin-starred restaurants, and you can eat, royal cuisine. You can also eat vegan with the temple food, traditional Buddhist temple food, as well as, down and dirty on the street. Yeah.
Is there an element of regionality to your cuisine or the cuisine that really speaks to your heart? Obviously, your parents come from different parts of the country. Mm-hmm. Did they kind of instill any sense of regionality in what you were doing?
Yeah, I mean, I would have to say that my father is from what is now North Korea, and so he loves the traditional North Korean dishes, so these like cold noodle soups, these large dumplings and stuff. So we grew up eating a lot of that. So I think that I'm very familiar with some of the most loved dishes from the North. My mom is from just outside of Seoul. And, she doesn't like her kimchi too funky or too spicy, whereas if you go down south, it gets funkier, it gets spicier, it gets, fishier. So her palate's a little bit more mild, but I have to say, I love it down south where, like bring on the funk, bring on the noise, bring on all of those big flavors. Like it just like punches you in the face and stuff. So, I have to say I probably have diverged a bit from my parents' palate a little bit because I love all of those deep, complex, umami-filled flavors from the South.
Also, you grew up in the States.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if you can talk to us about the specificity of Korean American food.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you and what's your take on it?
Yeah. I mean, all food evolves. Chinese American cuisine, it's its own thing. You cannot find beef with broccoli or chow fun or, like chow mein, all these
Famously,
dishes in China at all. Like these dishes do not exist. And Italian American cuisine is absolutely the same thing. So depending on immigration patterns and ethnic enclaves and, just people have to adapt and start using different ingredients. And it's a natural progression when immigrants move to a new country and they can't find the specific ingredients that they had in their homeland. And also, as the generations of immigrants become more mature, like I'm first generation, but now we're getting older and now there's a new generation. Like, of course, like the cuisines are starting to meld together and the world is becoming a much smaller place. There's so much fusion going on. And so I feel like, Korean American cuisine is definitely evolving, but it's almost a melting pot. Like Korean Mexican cuisine is a huge thing. Like, putting kimchi on top of tacos and using some of these great barbecue Korean style meats and putting them into tacos and throwing things together. It is so incredibly delicious. And, Korean fried chicken is actually, you can argue, is a Korean American thing because it came over to Korea from the American presence of the army there and the GIs. It's literally from the South, and then it came over with the presence of the military, and it stuck with a vengeance. It evolved, frying in Asia takes more of a tempura style, so it's more of a wet batter. So it kind of evolved more to like a wet batter, very thin, very crispy and light. And, then employed all of those great, sauces, of fermented sauces of Korea, like gochujang and soy sauce, garlic and ginger, and using all these ingredients. And it became its own unique product and then boomeranged back around the world, back to America as something that is specifically Korean and quite different from Southern fried chicken. Now, Korean fried chicken, of course, has also evolved. Like every time I go back to Korea, I'm seeing styles that are more like Southern fried chicken, with like even like using buttermilk and these like thick kind of like nubbly crusts and, rosemary on top, peanuts on top, like anything goes. Today's invention is tomorrow's tradition to some extent. And I just love it. But, I don't really... I've been waving the Korean flag and for such a long time now, and I really want Korean flavors to go global and it to become one of the great loves, like Italian food, like Mexican food, like Chinese food. And I don't feel that the cuisine has to maintain 100% authenticity in order to do that. If you look at Italian food in America, I think most Italians feel like, what is this? Like the meatball subs and like the different forms of pizza, like eggplant parm and like, Italian wedding soup, like they were like, what is this cuisine, right? And
I'm not going to pass judgment.
Exactly. You know what I mean? But it's just evolved and it's loved and it has a DNA of Italian cuisine from Italy, but it's definitely evolved to be its own thing and its own cuisine and an authentic Italian-American version of it.
I want to wind the clock back and go back to your childhood and wonder if you can evoke one of these kind of Korean-American experiences of your own. Any dishes that stick out to you in terms of what you were eating at home and that perhaps your parents were making for you? And I suppose, was that the introduction to your love of food and how did it develop from that? Because your career took a bit of twists and turns before you landed in this, right?
Definitely. So, back when I was growing up in New Jersey, my sister and I were the only Asian students in our entire school, and there were no other Korean families, no other Asian families, and there was no Asian grocery store nearby. I think there was like one really small, like dumpy Chinese grocery store that was nearby. But and it's not like now where you can buy everything pre-made. You had to make absolutely everything. So my mom was literally cooking all the time to get that taste of home that both my father and her craved so much. And so we would get these huge packages from Korea just full of all these dried ingredients, just like dried seaweed and dried chili flakes and peppers and chilies and, ginseng roots and teas and etc. And like my mom would like rip them open all excited, etc. And then she would just start cooking. So I grew up in a very food-centric home. There was always something fermenting on the back porch, whether it was kimchi or she was making gochujang or like some kind of like fermented rice drink or like drying seaweed in the garage, drying chilies out on the picnic tables, So food was a big part of our lives. And for most Asian families, food is also a language of love. And my mom still does this, even if you're sad, just eat something, make you feel better.
Here in London, you used to run Judy Joo, and then you decided to move into this new concept, which is Soulbird. One was fancier, I suppose.
Yes.
Soulbird very much speaks to,
Yes, exactly.
the more
Yes.
comforting aspect, of course, of food.
Yes.
Why the change? And can you tell us more about your plans for what's next?
Yeah, so I had 3 locations of Judy Joo. I had 2 in London and 1 in Hong Kong. And it was just time to move on. I wasn't getting along with my business partner that well. And so, it was very amicable, but, we're just like, let's just agree to disagree. And we just split ways. And, we just, we closed 2 of them and he kept Soho open for a while. And that one actually just closed, but it was just time to move on. And sometimes you just have to like close chapters, And then I decided with my other business partner to open up Soulbird, just because we've had this cult following of our Korean fried chicken. And we decided it deserved its own concept. And we felt that there wasn't anything in the quick serve space that was catering or focused in Korean food. And we felt that there was a gap in the market. And, just like, why don't we just do something that is like kind of more simple, streamlined, open up a bunch of them and eventually sell it. Yeah.
Well, what makes Soulbird's chicken so extraordinary? What is the secret to the specific chicken that you do there?
It's a classic Korean fried chicken. So it is made with the wet batter. And because of that, it has this like kind of thin, very crispy, like cracking shell, which, Korean fried chicken has also in the past been nicknamed like stained glass chicken because you get that like nice crispy crunch or like eggshell chicken. So it's a double frying technique too. So we're definitely employing that like kind of unusual technique that you don't see a lot, And we also have like our great umami-filled sauces, that are really grounded in, Korea's like cornerstone flavors. So gochujang, which is a fermented chili paste, and soy sauce, which is for, obviously like fermented soybeans, and just, infused with like garlic and onions and ginger and just kind of, tossing it in that and taking it mainstream.
That was Judy Joo speaking to me in the studio at Midori House. You're listening to The Menu. Plenty of diaspora communities around the world have become unofficial ambassadors of Korean soft power through the decades. Many cities in North America have their own Koreatowns, and it's these districts that authors Joo Ki-hong and Matt Rodbard set out to celebrate in their 2016 book, Koreatown. Now the duo are back with a new cookbook. Koreaworld returns to these neighborhoods while also broadening the remit to all the spots that have sealed Korean food success globally. From Jeju fried rockfish to pineapple kimchi fried rice, the recipes in this volume bring together the latest in modern Korean cooking both at home and abroad. Monocle's Sophie Monaghan-Coombs caught up with co-author Matt Rodbard to find out more. She began by asking him how he and Juki first met.
Dookie and I met 12 years ago. We were working on a Korean guidebook in New York City. We both were judges, and we were combing the streets of New York for Korean restaurants. And we became fast friends, and we became really interested in bringing modern Korean food to the forefront. We wrote a book called Koreatown, which was published in 2016, and it was a great success. We were very blessed to have a lot of people read it and buy it and cook from it. And about 3.5 years ago, we decided we wanted to kind of do a follow-up, but cookbooks don't really have sequels. It's not really a thing. So we were like, how are we going to do a fully new book about Korean food after having written one? Well, we decided we were going to write a book about modern Korean food, mostly in Korea. So from our Western point of view, our American point of view, we covered the nuances and the excitement around food in Seoul, in Gangwon-do, in Jeju, all around the country. And later in the book, we ended up back in America, in the Korea towns of America, and found what is truly the most exciting movement in American food right now. And I'm biased because I'm an author, but honestly, if you ask anyone in food, Korean food is the hottest topic.
And maybe then we could start at the very beginning. You talk about Korean food being a very hot topic now, but I wonder how you were first introduced to Korean food and kind of when you became really fascinated and enthused by it.
You know, Sophie, I learned about Korean food from my good friend Jason O in college in the early 2000s. You know, he was a proud Korean American, cooked a lot of Korean food, and he really introduced me later in New York when we lived together about this world of Korean food that was barbecue, but also, you know, soups and stews, chigas and tongs, that, you know, something that is less written about, but more enjoyed by everyday Koreans. And, you know, around that time is when Dookie and I started writing our guidebook, and it kind of just started there. As a journalist and food writer, I really was intrigued and interested in this culture of Korean Americans, and having, you know, many friends who are Korean American, you know, rooting me on, I was able to really continue to write and focus on Korean American food and culture. And, you know, for my luck, you know, Korean culture has obviously become one of the most predominant cultures in the world. And for a country of, you know, only 50 million citizens, the soft power of Korea is really, really, really prominent, and food is a big part of it. So as just an interested journalist and somebody who enjoyed writing about all sorts of food, it was the story of a lifetime for me, a story of a generation, and I just couldn't stop writing about it. And so it just really lined up well for the second book.
You mentioned this is a follow-up to your 2016 book, Koreatown. Could you talk a little bit more about how and why the world of kind of Korean food, but also Korean culture has changed in those 8 years since? You know, maybe a little bit about the influence of Netflix and this kind of Hallyu, the Korean wave that's really sort of swept around the globe.
Great point, Sophie. I think Hallyu is an important term, the Korean wave, and really Netflix has been a real anchor for Korean television shows like Squid Game. There's, of course, Korean cinema like Minari, and all sorts of K-pop, you know, running through the veins of American teens and tweens. And, you know, this has been such a boost for Korean culture in the world. But in America, you know, it's really remarkable that these K-dramas and this music has affected us as a culture in a way that, you know, we can't really judge it now. We're going to judge it in generations. And, you know, when young children who watch a K-drama in Korean, subtitled in English, and then ask their parents to take them to a restaurant and have hue, which is a Korean sashimi, or gamjatang, which is a Korean pork neck stew, or even make their own kimchi from our books, you know, it's remarkable because a decade ago, you know, we were talking about Korean food in terms of kimchi, tacos, and barbecue, and that's really it. And really, if anyone Korean American was looking at those stories, they're like, man, our culture has more going on than just a Korean taco. So this kind of wave of Hallyu is remarkable. It's almost a tidal wave, I'd say.
Let's talk a little bit more about the food then. I wonder if there's certain kind of ingredients or trends. We've kind of evolved from the Korean taco or something, you know, like that. What are the kind of flavors and ingredients that you're seeing a lot of at the moment?
It's a great call. And you know, Koreaworld is all about modern Korea. And so when we wrote about Korean food in 2015, we were writing about barbecue and kimchi and namul. But now we're writing about V60 coffee in Seoul, which to me, and I've traveled the world writing about coffee, there's no more sophisticated scene than in Seoul right now. I'm sorry, Japan, you're not the number one scene in Asia. It's Korea. And so I think about things like a V60 coffee pour over. I think of things like Gilgari toast, which is a sweet and savory toast that you find on the street that has egg and grape jelly and is made with these very light brioche. And I think about things like, you know, persimmon kimchi that we found at a temple in Jeollado, and we think about this plant-based cooking that became popular by the Netflix chef Jean Kwan, but as we write in our book, there's much more going on in Korean temple food than you're going to find on Netflix. And we just want to think about this expanded universe of plant-based cooking in Korea and, going to temples and enjoying temple stays. I mean, I could go on and on. There's really a lot of modern innovation happening that is rooted in the traditions of Korean cooking, which is based around the jangs like gochujang, doenjang, and ganjang, but also this modernity that is only really starting to peek its head. Like one example I'll close with, Sophie, is vongole. We found this pasta all over Seoul. And we have a vongole recipe in the book, which some folks may be scratching their heads like, Korean, is this some kind of facsimile? No, it's actually an amazing recipe with freshly made noodles and clams and garlic and herbs. And really, if you think about it, the terroir of Korea is perfect for making vongole.
Yeah, there's lots of kind of surprising ingredients or recipes in the book. And I wanted to ask you, you obviously talk about how important Korean food has been in the US and had such an influence. And when you were traveling in Korea, did you see that as kind of a two-way dialogue? Could you see influences from the West in kind of modern iterations of Korean cooking as well?
Absolutely. I think there's always been this flowing of ideas between Hyde Park, New York, where the CIA is based, and there's a large Korean population, a student body there, and then, of course, back to Seoul. So there's these ideas flowing, and I would say in America, we're seeing Korean ideas expressed in the restaurant group Hand Hospitality. Those guys they're bringing these restaurants from Korea into the streets of New York. One is Ari Ari, which is downtown in the East Village. One of my favorite Korean restaurants right now, and it's a restaurant based in Busan. And it's really based around modern Korean cooking. One example is a hot rice bowl, or bibimbap, but with an uni cream. So it's like using uni, but using it in a Western way, putting butter and cream inside of it and making it feel very, almost like a French-Korean mashup. That's like one example. But back in Seoul, I was just there this past January, and I'm walking through a neighborhood like Seongsu-dong, which, is like the Bushwick of Seoul. And really, I'm in the pages of Monocle, you've written about Seongsu-dong before. And I'm seeing Szechuan flavors throughout in restaurants like Flavortown. So like the mala, tingly, Szechuan peppercorns being expressed in explicitly Korean dishes like bibimbaps and in Korean fried chicken. So I think there's this flowing of ideas, not just from America back to Korea, but, the Korea to China, Korea to London. And it's really exciting, the scene in Seoul.
Thank you, Sophie. This is The Menu. Now it's time for the week's top food and drink headlines. Here is Monocle's George Ruskin.
France's postal service, La Poste, has unveiled a scratch and sniff stamp that smells like freshly baked baguette. Released to celebrate the upcoming Olympics in Paris, the stamp depicts a crusty baguette wrapped in a French tricolour ribbon. Priced at €1.96, and with only 594,000 in circulation, this limited edition is expected to be highly sought after by stamp collectors and food lovers alike. A small taco stand in Mexico City has made history by being awarded a Michelin star. Taqueria El Califa de Leon features just 4 tacos on its menu, and its chef attributes the honour to the simplicity and quality of his ingredients. The busy taco stand, which has been part of the San Rafael neighbourhood for over 50 years, is one of several eateries to be awarded a Michelin star in its first ever guide to Mexico. In South Korea, prices of one of the country's most popular snacks are rising due to unexpected global demand. Dried seaweed, known locally as gim, is consumed in everything from salads to ice cream. However, its recent international popularity has caused prices to rise by over 80% in the last year. The government has lifted tariffs on imports to try and stabilise costs, but many Koreans are concerned that with demand outstripping supply, producers will favour the lucrative international market. Those are the week's food and drink headlines. Now back to Chiara.
Thanks, George. You're listening to The Menu. Next, we head to Helsinki, which, like many cities in Europe, is experiencing a Korean food boom. The city is now home to dozens of Korean restaurants, some Korean-style cafes and shops too. With its generous and traditional approach to Korean barbecue, Ezip is one of the best-loved spots in town. Its tables are always laden with a lavish spread of meats and vegetables for this most communal and plentiful of Korean food traditions. Our Helsinki correspondent Petri Burtsoff met up with head chef Jungva Sontag to find out more about what it takes to run an authentic spot away from Korea's shores.
Lovers of Korean food have plenty of options in the Finnish capital, yet not all places serve authentic home-cooking food, opting for fusion dishes or 2 or 3 popular foods like kimchi or bibimbap instead. Many Korean restaurants have chefs from other Asian countries who want to cash in on the Korean food trend. Jungva Sontag is an exception. She ran her own restaurant in Korea before moving to Finland a decade ago. At her restaurant Ezip, Sontag has decided to focus on authentic Korean dishes that she prepares in a home cooking style.
Nowadays, there is not exactly authentic Korean because, recipes developed by time by goes. And then, but basically Korean know Korean food well. And then who are not learning restaurant in Korea, then it's not easy to, make own recipe. So I'm very proud of myself then, yeah.
Sontag is a native of Busan, but honed her skills in the capital Seoul's restaurant scene. Her menu is a mix of various regional cuisines.
What are some of the most, when Finns come here and eat, what do they like the most? What do they order the most?
Nowadays, they watching Korean TV from, Netflix, and then they very curious about what they eat, the who they like star, that they curious about this thing and that thing that is like they saw in TV, basically. And then nowadays jjajangmyeon and tteokbokki and bulgogi, of course barbecue. Yeah, bibimbap also very popular. So I cannot say one thing. Yeah.
And we're actually sitting here at the table where your customers barbecue their food, and it's a very social thing, right? You're sitting around the table and you barbecue together. How does that work in Finland? Because Finnish people have a reputation of being a little bit reserved and quiet, but here they come together, they sit around the same table and they barbecue their food. What's the atmosphere like here in the evenings?
Yes, actually, in Finnish eating cultures, they eat their own food, but the Korean food is sharing together and then enjoy that moment. So when I saw, for example, barbecue, we bring many dishes at the same time, and then all table full of full of food. So they are very surprised at the first. Say, "Oh, this much? How can I eat?" And then, but after that, they finally eat all, and then they're very happy. They grill together and then learn how to eat, and then they like that kind of style also. First time they very surprised with the full of dishes on the table, and then they started grilling by themselves and then sharing together. Yeah, they enjoy that. Yeah.
We are far, far, far from Korea, yet you are making authentic Korean food. How much of a challenge is it to get good ingredients?
Yeah, that also most important things. And then one good thing is Chinese cabbage in Finland, it's very good. So it's very important to me because, everybody think about Korean food, then kimchi first. Kimchi is most important first. The material is Chinese cabbage, but it's very nice. And then otherwise, most ingredients I willing to find in Finland, and then try to new way. For example, muikku in Finland, they only fried it, but I make it as a soup, but people like it. Yeah.
muikku is the small fish vendors that Finns like, as you said, fried. So I also want to know about personally how you feel about sort of the fact that you are far away from your home country and now there is this boom of people interested in your cuisine. Do you feel like it's your responsibility maybe to educate also the Finns a little bit about the real Korean food?
Yeah, if it's possible, I want to do, and then if I have chance, I want to do like that, you know. And one of my dream also kind of cooking school or cooking lesson. That also one of my dreams.
And do you have, I mean, we've now spoken about food, but of course Korean cuisine is about drinks as well. Do you also serve Korean drinks? And if yes, maybe you can tell us a little bit about what type of drinks.
Yes, you know, soju is very popular. It's kind of Korean style vodka. And then we have cask beer, some makgeolli. It's kind of rice wine. So people already they know where than me. So they come to, do you have this? Do you have that? Yeah, we serve this. And then they say very, you know, surprised and they very happy. So there is many ways to drink soju and beer, and for example, it's kind of boom shot, you know, mix with the soju and beer together. Yeah, they already know that, and then they're willing to make themselves. Yeah.
Oh, it's so surprising. They already know so much about. This is surprising to me. Were you surprised to find out that your customers know so much?
They come and talk to me. I saw that on the TV or through the Netflix, and then I want to try this, I want to try that. Yeah, I'm also very surprised they know me better than me.
For Monocle in Helsinki, I'm Petri Burtsoff.
Thank you, Petri. And that's all for this edition of The Menu. Remember that we are back with a new episode again on Friday at 2000 London time. That's at midday in San Francisco. Also, don't forget to tune into our spin-off show Food Neighborhoods for a tour of some of the world's tastiest destinations. I am Chiara Rimella. This programme was produced by Monica Lillis, and our sound engineers were Mariella Bevan and Sarah Nicol. Thanks for listening, and until next week.